Welcome to Basic Filmmaking. This is our foundational course to everything we do at DEO as far as making films and motion pictures go. So this is a very fun course. The projects that you're going to be doing are a lot of fun to do, and so we're really excited that you're taking it, and we know you're going to learn a lot, and it's a lot of fun for us to see what you guys come up with when you do your workshop projects. So let's dive in there and just talk right now a little bit about what do we talk about when we're talking about a film or a motion picture or a movie. What is it? And what it really boils down to is there are stories. We're telling a story using motion pictures. So before we dive in there to how to film stuff and what to do when you get a camera in your hand, we need to talk a little bit about the foundation of what is story. And even though we have another class on storycraft that we encourage you to take as well, we need to get a little bit of basic information across in this particular beginning section so that as we move forward into making films, you know what a story is and how to tell the basic parts of stories. So let's talk a little bit about story structure. The basics of story structure is there's three parts, and let's talk about each part. The first part is what we're going to call the setup. And we kind of draw it like this with a line. A setup is where the beginning information is. It's where the basic beginning of the story occurs. Usually it's also where we meet our protagonist or our hero or whoever we're going to be enjoying the film from. And so the hero is usually here at the beginning, and at the setup time we have a basic world. It starts out, once upon a time there is a person doing something, and the world is balanced, the world is basic. Everything is simple. We see a lot of the early information about the things that we're going to need to know that make the film take off at the beginning. But so far in the world, everything is balanced in the setup. Everything is normal. There's nothing unexpected going on. It's just basic information that happens at the beginning. So that's the first part of any story, is the setup. The second part is going to be this, where we insert to conflict. Conflict. Now, conflict just means something happens, something unexpected, something occurs. We have the setup, everything is going along. Once upon a time, everything was fine in the world, and our hero was happy, and then conflict happens. And when conflict happens, it's going to throw everything that was in the protagonist or our hero's world off of balance. It messes up everything. So we have our setup at the beginning, and then something happens, something unexpected, something unlikely happens that causes conflict. It messes up the whole world, and your hero is going to have to deal with the conflict. So as we mentioned in Storycraft, we talk about Humpty Dumpty. You have Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Well, that is your setup. We have Humpty Dumpty, he's on a wall. That's all we need to know for the setup. And then our conflict. Humpty Dumpty has a big fall. We have conflict. Something unexpected happens. Humpty Dumpty, poor guy, falls off the wall. That's not going to be good. And then we have the end, the third part of it, which is resolution. Somehow the story has to resolve. Somehow it has to come to a conclusion where our hero deals with the conflict and the world is restored to some form of balance, some form of normality. It might not be quite as balanced or quite as normal as it was when it started, but somehow at the end we have to have a resolution of some sort. So in the poor case of Humpty Dumpty, we have the setup. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. He has to deal with this conflict, all right? And Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. What's going to happen? How's he going to deal with the fact that now his world is unbalanced? And so poor Humpty Dumpty has all the king's horses and men come, but they can't fix him. And the resolution is, well, it's kind of sad. Humpty Dumpty has a bad day. No one can put him back together again. So all stories are going to function in this basic three-part structure. You have the setup. Everything is one way. Everything is fine. Your hero character is fine and balanced. Something happens that upsets the world. There's a conflict. Something gets in the way. And then we have resolution. The story has to wrap itself up. The hero has to deal with the conflict, and how he deals with it is going to determine how the story ends. So if you think about it, we deal with story structure all the time. Anytime one of your friends comes along and says, hey, guess what happened? That's part of story structure. That's the once upon a time I was doing this. Something happened that upset my day or was unexpected, and now I've dealt with it this way. And so you have your three-part structure, your setup, your conflict, and your resolution. Well, you can do a lot of interesting things with how you make film. The one thing that you cannot do is sacrifice on the story portion. If you are not telling a story, if it doesn't have all these three parts, it doesn't matter how good you do as far as my framing of the shot or my audio quality or how cool my shots look, it won't really matter. If the story is bad, then your film is going to be bad. So we got to make sure that in everything that you do, you have all three parts of the story and that it tells a good story. It sets itself up, it introduces good conflict. I guess conflict is never good, but good conflict for the sake of the movie, and then there's some form of restoration. And when we talk about film, we're going to be talking about specific moments or scenes where we're going to show a moment in time. We're not going to just necessarily roll the film and it's a 90-minute story and we never cut the film and everything happens in there, although you can do that. Most of the time what we're talking about is specific moments of time where we're going to tell, okay, this is where the story sets up and we're going to show a specific moment. And then this is a specific moment where conflict happens, and another specific moment where there's resolution at the end. When you're writing a story, you can have a lot of time because you can take, 40,000 words and write a novel, and you have all the time in the world to build on these three sections. But when you're making a film, you do not have that luxury of time to just take forever. You're gonna have to really narrow down and say, okay, I need to show these three elements in this story. I'm gonna narrow it down and focus on this moment, this moment, this moment, and this moment. And those are the only moments that I have time for to really put the story together. So when we talk about story, you need to make sure as we're moving forward and making films that you try to pick key moments that put the story together, and only those moments. If you have a moment that's not necessary, you'll probably cut it. So we'll talk a little more about that later, but for now, let's talk about equipment.